You don't need a gym to live past 90. Let that sink in. You don't need the rows of machines, the racks of dumbbells, the expensive trainers, or the grueling routines that so many believe are the key to strength and longevity. The truth, and it may shock you, is that the world's longest living elders, those who live not just into their 80s, but their 90s and beyond, are not found in gyms at all. They are not sweating under fluorescent lights or pushing through punishing sets of weights. Instead, they are quietly practicing the same 6 simple movements every day. Movements so natural, so integrated into their lives that most of us overlook them entirely. Yet these are the very movements that keep their joints supple, their minds sharp, and their independence intact. It is a contradiction that shatters everything you've been told about aging. Fitness advertisements insist that without equipment, without a membership, without a strict regimen, you will decline. Doctors warn about the dangers of inactivity, but rarely show you the small daily actions that actually sustain the body across decades. Meanwhile, elders in longevity hotspots across the globe, from small villages in Japan to the hills of Sardinia to the gardens of Costa Rica, are proof that the simplest habits are the most powerful. No fancy workouts, no digital fitness trackers, no supplements that cost a fortune. Just 6 movements, repeated day after day, that unlock resilience in both body and mind. Think of it this way. Most people today chase after exercise like it is something you must buy, schedule, or force yourself into. But the elders who outlive everyone else treat movement as life itself. They do not separate it into a workout. It is their daily ritual, woven into chores, routines, and traditions. And this is the hidden secret. Longevity isn't built in bursts of extreme effort. It's built in consistency, in the repetition of movements that keep you mobile, balanced, and mentally alive. Now here is where it gets even more surprising. The 6 movements you're about to hear are not exotic. They are not advanced yoga poses or martial arts sequences or high-intensity drills. They are movements you already know how to do. You may have even done them today without realizing their value. The difference is that elders who live long lives do them with intention, daily, without fail. Each one strengthens something essential: your balance, your grip, your ability to breathe fully, your capacity to stand tall and steady. Together, they form a complete system of strength for life. Let's face the contradiction plainly. While the majority of people in the modern world pour money into gyms, supplements, and miracle diets, the elders who live the longest, the ones who remain strong in their late 80s and 90s, follow none of these trends. They bend to pick up things, they reach overhead, they carry small loads, they walk with purpose, they balance, and most of all, they maintain the to get up from the floor. These 6 movements, done every day, are the hidden blueprint for longevity. Imagine this: a 92-year-old woman in Okinawa still tending to her garden, bending down to pull weeds, squatting to plant, rising with ease. A 95-year-old man in Sardinia climbing a small hill to visit a neighbor, balance steady, breath strong. These are not exceptions. These are examples of what becomes possible when you never stop practicing the basics. They are living proof that the body does not fail suddenly. It fades when you stop moving it in the ways it was designed to move. And here's the part that will open your eyes even wider. Research shows that loss of independence in old age is not caused first by disease, but by loss of movement. When you can no longer squat down to tie your shoes, you depend on someone else. When you can no longer balance to step over a curb, you risk a fall. When you can no longer get up from the floor, you need assistance for the simplest tasks. These losses come not because the body ages, but because the body is no longer trained to maintain them. Meanwhile, elders who continue these 6 daily movements delay decline for years, sometimes decades. So what are these 6 movements? That is the countdown you are about to discover. We will start at number 6, the one most people overlook, and work our way to number 1, the most powerful movement predictor of long life. With each step, you'll see how something so simple carries profound benefits, not just for the body, but for the brain and the heart. And by the time we reach the final movement, you'll understand why doctors in the field of longevity quietly admit that this single test can predict your risk of death within the next decade. This is no gimmick. It is no trend. It is the truth that has been hiding in plain sight, preserved in the lives of elders who simply never stopped doing what they always did. They did not surrender movement to age. They did not accept the slow decline. And because of that, they lived longer, healthier, more independent lives. Now, as you prepare to follow this countdown, remember the contradiction at the heart of it all. You don't need a gym to live past 90. You don't need machines. You don't need memberships. You need the 6 movements that carry life through every season. Elders around the world already know this. The question is, will you learn it before it's too late? Stay with me, because in just a moment we'll begin with number 6, the overlooked daily motion that, if lost, can take your independence away almost overnight. Every year that passes after 60, the difference between staying strong and slipping into decline comes down to one thing: movement. Not complicated training, not gym memberships, not hours on a treadmill, just the ability to keep doing the simple motions that let you live on your own terms. The stakes could not be clearer. Lose these movements and you lose balance. Lose balance and you lose the ability to walk safely across a room. Lose the ability to walk and suddenly your world shrinks to 4 walls. Lose these movements and you lose memory. Science has shown over and over that mobility is tied to brain health. When you stop moving, your brain receives fewer signals, fewer challenges, fewer reminders of how to adapt and stay sharp. And when memory begins to slip, so too does your confidence, your conversations, your sense of self. Lose these movements, and you lose freedom. That word carries more weight than most realize. Freedom is not just the ability to drive, to travel, to socialize. Freedom is the ability to get out of a chair when you choose. Freedom is walking to the bathroom without fear. Freedom is being able to go outside, breathe fresh air, and know you are not trapped by your own body. Think about this. The single greatest fear most elders face is not death itself. It is losing independence. It is waking up one morning and realizing you cannot live alone anymore. It is having to hand your life over to nurses, caregivers, or family members, not because your mind has gone, but because your body has given out. And that giving out begins silently, in the smallest of ways. It begins the day you avoid squatting because it feels stiff. It begins when you stop reaching overhead because your shoulders are sore. It begins when you give up daily walks because you feel too tired. At first, it seems like nothing, a concession to age. But every concession adds up. Every movement you stop doing pulls another thread from the fabric of independence until one day the whole fabric unravels. The urgency is real, and the numbers prove it. Studies show that after the age of 65, 1 in 3 adults will suffer a fall each year. And falls are not minor events. They are the leading cause of fatal and non-fatal injuries among older adults. A single fall can lead to a hip fracture, which doubles the risk of death within a year. What makes this statistic even more heartbreaking is that most falls are preventable, not by medicine, not by surgery, but by maintaining the daily movements that preserve balance, coordination, and strength. The ability to step over an obstacle, the ability to turn smoothly, the ability to lower yourself and rise again. These are the very skills that determine whether a stumble ends in recovery or disaster. And then there is mobility decline itself. Research from the National Institute on Aging shows that mobility disability, the inability to walk a quarter mile, affects nearly 40% of adults over 65. Once mobility is lost, quality of life declines sharply. Depression rates skyrocket, social isolation increases, hospital visits become frequent, and the most sobering fact is this: loss of mobility is one of the strongest predictors of mortality. Not blood pressure, not cholesterol, not even certain chronic diseases, but mobility. Whether or not you can move freely predicts how long you will live. That is the brutal but motivating truth. Memory decline tells a similar story. Neurologists have discovered that movement is one of the most powerful protectors of brain health. When you walk, when you balance, when you coordinate your body, you fire circuits across your brain. Blood flow increases. Neurochemicals like dopamine and serotonin rise. Neurogenesis, the creation of new brain cells, accelerates. But when you stop moving, those benefits disappear. Brain scans reveal that sedentary seniors show shrinking in the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for memory and learning. In other words, stop moving and you don't just weaken your body, you weaken your mind. That is why elders who keep practicing these simple daily movements often remain sharper, more alert, and more socially engaged than peers who stop. The connection is undeniable. The body carries the brain. And yet, despite all this evidence, most seniors slip into the same trap. They stop moving not because they have to, but because they believe it no longer matters. They tell themselves it's normal to slow down, to avoid bending, to let others help. But the truth is brutal. Every time you stop moving, you accelerate decline. Every time you avoid a small effort, you hand away a piece of your independence. And once given away, it is rarely returned. Here is the emotional anchor you must hold on to. Lose these movements, and you lose balance, memory, and freedom. Those three losses are not just physical, they are existential. They change how you see yourself, how others see you, how much of your life you control. Balance is more than staying upright. It is the foundation of confidence. Without it, fear seeps into every step. Memory is more than recall. It is your identity. Without it, you lose your stories, your relationships, your connections. Freedom is more than choice. It is dignity. Without it, you live on someone else's schedule, not your own. But here's the reason for urgency. Decline does not wait politely. It does not announce itself in advance. It builds quietly, year after year, until suddenly it feels irreversible. The knees stiffen, the shoulders round, the steps shorten, the brain fog sets in. By the time most realize what has happened, years of resilience have already been lost. That is why you must act now, not later. The earlier you preserve these movements, the longer you hold on to life as you know it. And even if you feel it is too late, science proves that beginning again can still slow or even reverse decline. The human body is remarkably forgiving if given the chance. Think of the elders who thrive in their 80s and 90s. They are not superhuman. They are not genetically blessed. They are simply consistent. They bend, they reach, they carry, they balance, they walk, and they rise from the floor every single day. They do not wait until they are too weak. They do not stop because it feels difficult. They understand that to stop is to surrender, and surrendering means decline. So when you hear this countdown, don't treat it as interesting information. Treat it as a lifeline. Each movement we reveal is a thread that holds your independence together. Each one is a tool to protect your memory, your balance, and your freedom. The stakes are not small. They are life itself. And the urgency is now, because the difference between thriving and declining begins today, in the choices you make and the movements you keep. Stay with me, because what comes next will show you exactly which movements matter most, and why practicing them daily may be the single most powerful decision you make for the rest of your life. I've seen friends in their 70s thrive while others struggled. The difference was daily movement, not fancy workouts, not hours of sweating in gyms, not expensive machines lined up under bright lights. It was the small, steady movements they did without fail, every single day. And when you've lived long enough, when you've seen with your own eyes how one path leads to vitality and the other leads to decline, you begin to understand something younger people often miss. It's not about how much weight you can lift or how many miles you can run. It's about whether you can keep bending, reaching, standing, walking, balancing, and rising from the floor. That is the true test of aging well. I remember sitting at a kitchen table with two old friends. One of them, in his late 70s, was still gardening every morning, carrying buckets of water, bending down to plant, rising without help. He laughed easily, told stories with sharp memory, and carried himself with energy. The other, only 2 years older, had already stopped bending low. He found excuses not to reach overhead because it made his shoulders ache. He spent hours in his chair, relying on his family for small tasks. His mind had dulled, not from disease, but from a life that had quietly grown still. Both men were intelligent. Both had once been active. But the difference in how they aged was simple. One kept moving daily, and the other let movement slip away. That is why I speak with conviction. This isn't just opinion. It isn't nostalgia. It isn't an elder longing for the past. It is lived experience, backed by science that grows clearer every year. Studies of longevity hotspots around the world, Okinawa in Japan, Sardinia in Italy, Nicoya in Costa Rica, reveal the same truth. Elders there do not work out as we think of it. They move as part of life. They garden. They carry wood. They walk to see friends. They kneel for chores. They rise from the floor. Their movements are practical, repetitive, natural. And science confirms that these daily motions preserve joint flexibility, muscle strength, and even cognitive clarity. The wisdom of tradition is powerful, but it is only half the story. Modern science fills in the details, proving what elders always knew instinctively. Doctors now use tests like the sit to stand or get up from the floor as predictors of mortality. Neurologists point to studies showing that walking daily reduces the risk of dementia by up to 40%. Physical therapists warn that loss of grip strength predicts not just hand weakness, but overall survival rates. Again and again, science circles back to the same conclusion. Daily functional movement is more powerful than any single exercise program. And here's the part that too many miss. This is not about joining a gym. This is not about equipment. This is not about punishing your body or forcing yourself into routines that don't fit your life. It is about reclaiming the natural movements that belong to you already. No equipment, no gym, just you and your body. Every person alive has access to these 6 movements. You can begin in your living room, in your garden, in your kitchen. You can start while holding onto a chair for support if needed. There are no barriers, no prerequisites, no excuses. All you need is the will to begin and the consistency to keep going. I've watched too many people get discouraged by the idea of exercise. They think of heavy weights, of sweating in front of strangers, of pushing through routines designed for the young. And because it feels intimidating, they give up. But that is where the great misunderstanding lies. Longevity is not built on intimidation, it is built on integration, on movements that fit seamlessly into daily life, that feel natural because they are natural. Every elder in the villages that live the longest proves this. They are not doing anything extraordinary. They are simply refusing to let their bodies grow still. I recall visiting an elder woman in her late 80s who lived alone, high on a hillside. She had no gym, she had no trainer, she had no program written down. What she did have was a routine, walking up and down her hill each day to fetch water, bending in her garden to pull weeds, rising from the floor after sitting to rest, reaching overhead to hang her laundry in the sun. She never missed a day. Her body was lean, her steps steady, her mind sharp. When asked her secret, she smiled and said, "I never stopped moving." That was all. Her words stay with me because they cut through the noise of modern health advice. We are told to count calories, to track steps, to buy equipment, to download apps. But the wisdom of elders is simple. Never stop moving in the ways your body was designed to move. Science now backs this up with data, but the core truth requires no study. It is lived in the resilience of those who age well and ignored in the decline of those who don't. I tell you this not to frighten, but to reassure. Because too often people in their 60s, 70s, or even 80s believe it is too late. They say, "I've slowed down too much. I can't start now." But that is the lie decline tells. The reality is that the body remembers. Muscles can be rebuilt, balance can be retrained, joints can regain range. Even memory improves when movement returns. It does not matter if you begin gently. It does not matter if at first it feels awkward. What matters is that you begin and that you continue. Do not think of these 6 movements as a punishment or a burden. Think of them as keys. Each one unlocks something you may not even realize you are losing until it is gone. The ease of getting out of a chair, the confidence to walk across a street, the strength to carry your own groceries, the steadiness to step over a curb. They are not about looking fit. They are about living free, about staying yourself in your own home on your own terms for as long as life allows. And that is why I share this with you, not as theory, not as empty advice, but as an elder who has lived long enough to see what works and what fails. The friends who thrive are not the ones with the most money or the best genetics. They are the ones who never stop moving in the ways that mattered most. The ones who understood that daily practice, not occasional effort, is the secret to longevity. So as you listen to this countdown, hold on to this truth. It is within your reach. You need no special tools, no membership, no equipment. You need only your body, your will, and your willingness to keep moving. And if you do, the difference it will make on your balance, your memory, your freedom will astonish you. Now, let us begin the journey, starting with number 6, the overlooked daily bend that decides whether you will keep your independence or hand it away. We begin the countdown at number 6, and let me tell you, this one shocks most people because it seems so simple. Number 6 is the daily bend, the squat, the ability to lower yourself down and rise again. At first glance, it sounds ordinary, almost trivial. But here is the hard truth. Lose the ability to squat, and you lose the ability to live independently. It is that serious. Squatting is not just about exercise, it is about function. It is the difference between being able to pick something up off the floor and needing someone else to do it for you. It is the difference between sitting down safely on a chair and collapsing into it with a thud. It is the difference between being able to use the toilet without assistance and losing one of the most basic dignities of life. In villages where people live the longest, you see elders squatting daily. They squat to tend their gardens, to reach for something low, to rest in conversation, to prepare food. It is part of life, so their ability to do it never fades. In contrast, in modern life, we stop squatting almost entirely. We sit in chairs, we bend halfway, we avoid the deep bend of our knees. And slowly, without realizing it, we lose the mobility in our hips and knees that kept us steady for decades. Science confirms this. Research shows that the strength and flexibility in your lower body are direct predictors of fall risk, and falls are the single leading cause of injury and loss of independence among older adults. Here's the part that should give you both pause and hope. You can train the squat back into your body. You don't need weights, you don't need machines. All you need is the practice of lowering yourself and rising again. The simplest drill, tested by physical therapists worldwide, is the sit to stand. Find a chair, sit down, cross your arms over your chest, then rise to stand without using your hands. Repeat this motion 5, then 10 times. Each repetition wakes up the muscles in your legs, strengthens your hips, teaches your body again that you can support yourself. Do this daily, and you will notice the change in how steady you feel, how much easier it is to move, how much more confidence you carry with each step. I knew an elder in his late 70s who practiced sit-to-stands every morning. He began with just 3, struggling to rise without using his arms. Within weeks, he was doing sets of 10. Within months, he moved differently, faster, steadier, less afraid of falling. He told me once, "I don't train to be strong. I train so I never have to call my daughter to help me off the couch." That is the power of this movement. It is not about muscles for show. It is about muscles for freedom. Now, let's move to number 5 in the countdown, the overhead stretch, the daily reach. Once again, it may sound too simple to matter, but do not underestimate it. Reaching overhead is the movement that keeps your posture upright, your chest open, and your circulation strong. Lose this, and your shoulders round, your chest collapses, your breathing becomes shallow. Over time, that shallow breathing robs you of energy, reduces oxygen to your brain, and accelerates decline. But when you keep reaching overhead, you preserve the posture of youth, the lung capacity of vigor, the circulation that keeps your brain sharp and your heart resilient. Think of elders in long-living cultures, how they hang laundry to dry in the sun, stretching high to pin garments to a line. Think of them placing jars on shelves, reaching for fruit on branches, lifting their arms to wave in greeting. These small daily stretches add up to an open chest, a strong back, and healthy lungs. Science supports this too. Studies show that overhead reaching stimulates the muscles that support the spine, prevents frozen shoulders, and enhances lung function. In fact, Pulmonary therapists often prescribe arm lifts as exercises for patients with breathing difficulties because raising the arms expands the rib cage and draws in more air. So how can you practice this? Start with 10 arm lifts each day. Stand tall, feet steady, arms at your sides. Slowly raise both arms overhead as if reaching for the ceiling, then lower them back down. Breathe deeply as you lift, exhale as you lower. Do this 10 times in the morning, 10 times at night. If you want more challenge, hold a light object in your hands, a towel stretched between your palms, or even a small bottle of water. The goal is not to strain, but to open, to remind your shoulders and chest of the range they were designed to have. I once knew a woman in her 80s who did these stretches every morning before making her tea. She had the posture of someone 20 years younger. She stood tall, her breathing deep and easy. She told me, "If I stop reaching up, I'll shrink down." She was right. Reaching overhead does more than stretch muscles. It keeps you upright in both body and spirit. Now pause and reflect. The first 2 movements on this countdown are not complicated. They are not out of reach. They are not locked away in gyms or available only to the fit. They are natural, available, and necessary. And they prove the greater truth. Longevity is not about extraordinary effort. It is about ordinary effort, sustained daily. Squatting and reaching, bending and lifting are movements every child does freely. We lose them only when we stop practicing them. But the body remembers. The body can relearn. And once relearned, these movements restore something priceless, your independence. If you think these first 2 movements are too simple to change your life, think again. Science says otherwise. Elders who maintain squatting ability live longer without assistance. Elders who keep overhead breathe better, think clearer, and move freer. Each motion is a thread holding your independence together. Break enough threads and life unravels. But reinforce these threads and you weave a fabric of resilience that carries you forward for years to come. So do not wait for the day you struggle to rise from a chair. Do not wait for the moment you realize your shoulders are too stiff to lift. Begin now. Practice daily. Protect the simple, because the simple is what sustains you. And remember, this is only the beginning. We are just at numbers 6 and 5, the first steps in the countdown. The next movements build on these, each more surprising, each more vital, each more powerful in protecting not just your body but your very life. Stay with me, because number 4 is one you've probably done hundreds of times without realizing it holds the key to your strength. Number 4 on the countdown is carrying, cross-body movements that engage your grip, your core, and your stability all at once. This is not about lifting massive weights. It is about the everyday act of carrying groceries, buckets of water, baskets of laundry, or anything that requires you to hold and move with purpose. Carrying is a movement pattern so ordinary that most people ignore its importance, yet it is one of the clearest indicators of strength and longevity. Here's why. When you carry, you do more than use your arms. You activate the muscles in your hands, forearms, shoulders, and chest. Your core engages to stabilize your spine. Your legs coordinate to keep you balanced as you move. It is a full-body movement disguised as a chore. Lose the ability to carry, and you lose more than strength. You lose independence. If you can't carry a bag of groceries from the car, someone else must do it for you. If you can't hold a bucket of water or even a pot from the stove, daily living becomes dependent on others. That is why scientists pay close attention to grip strength. Study after study shows that grip strength is one of the strongest predictors of longevity. A weak grip does not just mean weaker hands, it means weaker nervous system signals, declining muscle coordination, and even increased risk of mortality. In fact, doctors now use grip tests as a diagnostic marker for overall health in older adults. Carrying builds grip. Carrying builds coordination. Carrying keeps your core stable. So how can you practice it daily? Start simple. Take 2 bags of groceries, balanced in weight, hold them at your sides, and walk slowly across a room. Focus on keeping your posture upright, your steps steady, your grip firm. If groceries aren't available, use 2 bottles of water or 2 light weights. Practice this farmer's walk for 30 seconds, rest, and repeat. Over time, you'll notice your hands holding stronger, your shoulders standing taller, your steps more confident. I recall seeing an elder man in his late 80s carry firewood each morning to heat his home. He didn't view it as exercise, but as life. Yet the act of carrying wood daily kept his grip iron strong and his balance steady long after others his age had grown frail. His doctor once remarked, "Your hands are younger than your years." That was the truth. His grip carried his life forward. Now we move to number 3 on the countdown: balance, step, and turn. This is one of the most overlooked yet critical movements in aging well. Balance is not just standing still on one leg. Balance is the ability to step over an obstacle, pivot to turn, and adjust your body quickly when the ground beneath you shifts. Lose this, and you invite falls, and falls are the greatest threat to independence in old age. The inner ear, the nervous system, the muscles of your legs, and the reflexes of your brain all work together when you balance. Each time you step carefully, each time you pivot smoothly, each time you recover from a stumble, your body trains itself to stay upright. But when you stop challenging your balance, these systems weaken. That is why so many falls occur not in extreme situations, but in everyday life, stepping off a curb, turning too quickly, or reaching sideways. The benefits of balance training are profound. Elders who practice balance daily reduce their fall risk dramatically. Their coordination sharpens. Their confidence in moving through the world grows. And perhaps most importantly, balance practice trains the brain as much as the body. Coordination is a neurological process. Each balance challenge strengthens the pathways between body and mind. So how do you practice it? The simplest drill is the heel-to-toe walk. Place one foot directly in front of the other, heel touching toe, and walk forward slowly in a straight line. Focus on steady steps, arms relaxed, eyes forward. At first it may feel awkward. You may wobble. That is the point. The wobbling is your body learning, your balance recalibrating, your brain firing to keep you steady. Do this daily, even for just a minute, and your confidence in stepping and turning will grow. I knew an elder woman who practiced heel-to-toe walks each evening in her hallway. She began by holding onto the wall for support, then gradually moved to walking unassisted. Within months, her fear of falling faded. She told me, "It feels like I can trust my legs again." That trust is priceless. It is what allows you to step outside without hesitation, to move freely without fear. So here we are, carrying at number 4, balance, step, and turn at number 3. These are not exotic, they are not difficult, yet they are essential. Carrying protects your strength, balance protects your stability. Together, they protect your independence. But as vital as these are, the next 2 movements carry even greater power, because they don't just protect your body, they protect your brain. And when you hear them, you'll understand why the longest living elders in the world never stop practicing them. Number 2 on the countdown is daily walking with purpose. At first glance, you might think, walking? Really? How could something so ordinary, so simple, rank this high in the movements that predict and protect longevity? But here's the shocking truth. Walking is not just transportation. Walking is medicine. Walking is communication between your body and your brain. Walking is the daily signal that tells every system in you, stay alive, stay sharp, keep going. Science has made this clear. Each step you take boosts circulation, delivering oxygen-rich blood to your muscles, and most importantly, to your brain. Each step increases neurogenesis, the birth of new brain cells in the hippocampus, the part of your brain that governs memory and learning. Think about that for a moment. Something as simple as walking tells your brain to grow new cells. That is not poetry. That is neuroscience, and it is one of the most powerful shields you have against decline. Studies have shown that seniors who walk daily lower their risk of dementia by up to 40%. 40%. That is not a small margin, that is life-changing. Walking also lowers the risk of heart disease, diabetes, and depression. But the mental benefits are just as staggering. Walking sharpens focus, lifts mood, calms anxiety, and even improves sleep. The rhythm of steps, the sway of arms, the gentle rise of heart rate, it all creates a cascade of positive signals through the nervous system. But here's what separates the kind of walking that preserves life from the kind that drifts away unnoticed. It is not about shuffling around the house. It is not about pacing aimlessly. It is about walking with purpose. Elders who live long lives walk to do things. They walk to the market. They walk in the garden to check their plants. They walk to visit neighbors. Their steps are not just motion, they are mission. Purposeful walking engages both the body and the brain. It connects movement with intention and intention with meaning. That combination is what keeps the circuits of life strong. Lose the ability to walk with purpose, and you lose your world. Suddenly, every errand becomes someone else's task. Every trip outdoors becomes dependent on assistance. And slowly, almost without noticing, the walls close in. Independence fades. Freedom narrows. This is why daily walking is not optional. It is essential. Let's speak emotionally now, because the truth deserves it. Every step is a message to your brain. A message that says, stay alive, stay sharp, stay engaged. Your brain listens. When you walk, it hears the rhythm of life and responds by keeping you alert. When you stop walking, it begins to quiet down, as though preparing for the end. Do not give it that signal. Send the opposite one. Walk daily and remind your brain you still need it, still demand it, still live fully. I once knew a woman in her 90s who walked her garden path every morning without fail. She didn't hurry. She didn't measure her distance with gadgets. She simply walked slowly, steadily, inspecting her plants, touching leaves, breathing the air. She lived alone, but her mind was sharp, her memory intact. When asked her secret, she laughed and said, "My garden reminds me I'm alive." Science now confirms what her intuition knew. Her steps each morning sent a signal of survival and strength to her brain. Now, here's a bonus tip that multiplies the benefit of walking. Do it outdoors. Walking inside has value, yes, but walking outside doubles the benefits. Why? Light and vitamin D. Exposure to natural sunlight resets your circadian rhythm, which governs sleep quality. It boosts vitamin D production, which supports bones, immune function, and mood. Add this to the neurogenesis triggered by walking itself, and you have a daily prescription for clarity, resilience, and vitality. A 20-minute stroll outdoors can accomplish what no pill can: restore both body and mind in unison. The beauty of this movement is accessibility. Anyone can begin. You do not need equipment. You do not need training. You only need to commit. Start with 10 minutes of purposeful walking each day. Walk to your mailbox. Walk to a neighbor's home. Walk around your garden, then slowly increase to 20, then 30 minutes. The key is consistency, not intensity. You are not chasing exhaustion. You are practicing life. And yet, too many seniors give up walking too soon. They fear falling. They fear fatigue. They fear the weather. So they stop, thinking they are protecting themselves. But stopping is the most dangerous choice of all. For every day you do not walk, your muscles weaken, your balance falters, your brain quiets. It becomes harder to begin again and easier to give up entirely. The spiral downward begins not with disease, but with the decision to sit instead of step. I remember another friend, a man in his late 70s, who resisted walking. He said, "Why bother? I'll just sit here. It's safer." Within a year, he needed help to move even across the room. Within 2 years, he no longer remembered his own routines. His body slowed and his mind followed. The contrast between him and the elders who walked daily was heartbreaking. Where one group thrived, he declined, all because he believed sitting was safer than stepping. The truth is this: walking is not just about legs. It is about life. Every step keeps the system awake. Every step delays decline. Every step buys you time. Time in memory, time in strength, time in freedom. The elders who walk daily do not just live longer, they live better. They preserve dignity, autonomy, and clarity. That is why walking with purpose is number 2 on this list. So here is your daily challenge. Walk with intention, not shuffling, not pacing. Purposeful steps. Tie it to a goal. Visit, garden, errand, exploration. And whenever possible, do it outdoors, under the sun, where light and air magnify the benefits. Remember this phrase: every step is a message to your brain. Let your brain hear it every day. And now, as powerful as walking is, it is not number one. There is still one final movement, one last daily action that carries even greater weight. A movement so predictive of longevity that doctors use it as a test of survival itself. The next one is not just about protecting your body or your brain, it is about proving to the world and to yourself that you are still strong enough to live free. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear may change the way you see your own future. Number one on the countdown, the single most powerful movement that predicts not only how long you will live, but how well you will live, is this: to get up from the floor unassisted. Out of all the movements, the squatting, the reaching, the carrying, the balancing, even the walking, this one stands above the rest. Why? Because if you can't rise from the floor without help, your independence is already slipping away. Think about it. Sitting on the floor is natural, something every child does without hesitation. Rising from it is second nature. But as the years pass, many stop going down to the ground at all. Chairs replace sitting cross-legged, beds replace low stools, and slowly the body forgets. Then one day, when you do need to get up from the floor, you discover it is nearly impossible without grabbing, straining, or calling for help. This moment marks a turning point. It is not just about weakness in the legs or stiffness in the hips. It is a marker that your functional independence is in jeopardy. Science has recognized this for years. In fact, researchers developed something called the sit-to-rise test. They ask elders to sit down on the floor and then rise without using their hands, knees, or arms for support. The score is based on how easily and how completely they can do it. The results are astonishing. Those who perform poorly on this test are significantly more likely to face mortality in the coming years compared to those who rise with ease. Why? Because the ability to rise unassisted integrates everything: strength, balance, flexibility, coordination, and cardiovascular endurance. It is the ultimate measure of functional fitness. To frame it dramatically but truthfully, if you can get up from the floor on your own, you are sending a message to your body and brain that you are still strong enough to survive on your own. If you can't, you are already signaling decline. That is why doctors, therapists, and researchers treat this movement as a predictor of mortality. It is not just another drill. It is a glimpse into the trajectory of your future. Now let's talk about why this matters emotionally. Imagine falling, even in a safe environment at home. If you can get up by yourself, the fall is frightening, yes, but manageable. If you cannot, the fall becomes dangerous, even life-threatening, not because of the fall itself, but because of the inability to rise again. Time on the floor means pressure sores, dehydration, panic, or worse. It is the inability to get back up that strips away independence, not the stumble itself. But here's the hope, and it is powerful. This ability can be trained, regained, and strengthened. No matter your age, practicing sitting down and rising up from the floor is one of the most effective daily habits you can adopt. Start with support if needed. Place a chair or sturdy surface nearby. Lower yourself carefully to the floor, then rise again, using as little assistance as possible. Over time, work toward reducing support until you can lower and rise freely. This practice builds your hips, strengthens your thighs, activates your core, and teaches your balance to respond. More importantly, it teaches your body confidence that if you fall, you can rise. I recall meeting a woman in her mid-80s who had made this her daily ritual. Each morning, she lowered herself onto a mat in her living room, sat for a few moments, stretched, then rose again. At first, she used her arms heavily. Over the months, she began using them less and less. By her 87th birthday, she could rise with just a light push of one hand. She smiled when she said, "I'm not afraid of falling anymore. I know I can get back up." That is independence, that is freedom, and that is what this movement gives back. Think about the symbolism of it, rising from the ground. It is the most primal expression of resilience. Children rise again and again as they learn to walk. Adults rise to face challenges. Elders who can still rise show the world and themselves that they are not finished. The floor does not claim them. They claim the floor. Science supports this dramatically. A study published in the European Journal of Preventive Cardiology found that inability to rise unassisted was linked with a higher risk of death within 6 years. Those who scored well were far less likely to die prematurely. The test predicted survival more reliably than many standard medical markers. Think about that. Something so simple, so basic, is more telling than many hospital tests, and you can practice it right now in your own home without equipment or expense. So how should you begin? Start small. Sit on the edge of a chair, then lower yourself halfway toward the floor and rise again. Do this a few times to build strength. Then progress to sitting fully on the floor with support, perhaps next to a couch or sturdy table, and rising slowly. Over time, challenge yourself to use less assistance. Aim for control, not speed. The goal is not to perform flawlessly on the first attempt. The goal is to improve steadily until rising becomes easier, smoother, more natural. Make it part of your routine. Every day, practice sitting and rising at least once. It may feel humbling at first. It may remind you of vulnerability. But with each attempt, you are taking back power. You are reclaiming the independence that so many lose simply because they stop trying. And as your strength returns, so will your confidence. Let me be absolutely clear. This is not just another exercise. This is the single most powerful movement to protect your freedom. It is the line between living life on your terms and being forced into dependence. It is the line between resilience and decline. It is the line between fear and confidence. So remember this message. If you can rise from the floor without help, you are not just strong. You are independent. You are free. And freedom is the essence of longevity. Every day you practice this movement, you are practicing life itself. Now, we've reached the end of the countdown. You've heard the 6 daily movements that the world's longest living elders never stopped doing. Each one builds a piece of the puzzle: bending, reaching, carrying, balancing, walking, and rising. But this last one, the rise from the floor, is the keystone. Lose it, and the structure collapses. Keep it, and the structure holds. So ask yourself, can you rise from the floor unassisted? If yes, preserve that ability. If not, begin now. The body remembers, it can relearn, and if you commit, you will not just add years to your life, you will add life to your years. Number 1 on the countdown, the single most powerful movement that predicts not only how long you will live, but how well you will live, is this: to get up from the floor unassisted. Out of all the movements, the squatting, the reaching, the carrying, the balancing, even the walking, this one stands above the rest. Why? Because if you can't rise from the floor without help, your independence is already slipping away. Think about it. Sitting on the floor is natural, something every child does without hesitation. Rising from it is second nature. But as the years pass, many stop going down to the ground at all. Chairs replace sitting cross-legged, beds replace low stools, and slowly the body forgets. Then one day, when you do need to get up from the floor, you discover it is nearly impossible without grabbing, straining, or calling for help. This moment marks a turning point. It is not just about weakness in the legs or stiffness in the hips. It is a marker that your functional independence is in jeopardy. Science has recognized this for years. In fact, researchers developed something called the sit-to-rise test. They ask elders to sit down on the floor and then rise without using their hands, knees, or arms for support. The score is based on how easily and how completely they can do it. The results are astonishing. Those who perform poorly on this test are significantly more likely to face mortality in the coming years compared to those who rise with ease. Why? Because the ability to rise unassisted integrates everything: strength, balance, flexibility, coordination, and cardiovascular endurance. It is the ultimate measure of functional fitness. To frame it dramatically but truthfully, if you can get up from the floor on your own, you are sending a message to your body and brain that you are still strong enough to survive on your own. If you can't, you are already signaling decline. That is why doctors, therapists, and researchers treat this movement as a predictor of mortality. It is not just another drill, it is a glimpse into the trajectory of your future. Now let's talk about why this matters emotionally. Imagine falling, even in a safe environment at home. If you can get up by yourself, the fall is frightening, yes, but manageable. If you cannot, the fall becomes dangerous, even life-threatening, not because of the fall itself, but because of the inability to rise again. Time on the floor means pressure sores, dehydration, panic, or worse. It is the inability to get back up that strips away independence, not the stumble itself. But here's the hope, and it is powerful. This ability can be trained, regained, and strengthened. No matter your age, practicing sitting down and rising up from the floor is one of the most effective daily habits you can adopt. Start with support if needed. Place a chair or sturdy surface nearby. Lower yourself carefully to the floor, then rise again, using as little assistance as possible. Over time, work toward reducing support until you can lower and rise freely. This practice builds your hips, strengthens your thighs, activates your core, and teaches your balance to respond. More importantly, it teaches your body confidence that if you fall, you can rise. I recall meeting a woman in her mid-80s who had made this her daily ritual. Each morning, she lowered herself onto a mat in her living room, sat for a few moments, stretched, then rose again. At first, she used her arms heavily. Over the months, she began using them less and less. By her 87th birthday, she could rise with just a light push of one hand. She smiled when she said, "I'm not afraid of falling anymore. I know I can get back up." That is independence, that is freedom, and that is what this movement gives back. Think about the symbolism of it, rising from the ground. It is the most primal expression of resilience. Children rise again and again as they learn to walk. Adults rise to face challenges. Elders who can still rise show the world and themselves that they are not finished. The floor does not claim them. They claim the floor. Science supports this dramatically. A study published in the European Journal of Preventive Cardiology found that inability to rise unassisted was linked with a higher risk of death within 6 years. Those who scored well were far less likely to die prematurely. The test predicted survival more reliably than many standard medical markers. Think about that. Something so simple, so basic, is more telling than many hospital tests, and you can practice it right now in your own home without equipment or expense. So how should you begin? Start small. Sit on the edge of a chair, then lower yourself halfway toward the floor and rise again. Do this a few times to build strength. Then progress to sitting fully on the floor with support, perhaps next to a couch or sturdy table, and rising slowly. Over time, challenge yourself to use less assistance. Aim for control, not speed. The goal is not to perform flawlessly on the first attempt. The goal is to improve steadily until rising becomes easier, smoother, more natural. Make it part of your routine. Every day, practice sitting and rising at least once. It may feel humbling at first. It may remind you of vulnerability. But with each attempt, you are taking back power. You are reclaiming the independence that so many lose simply because they stop trying. And as your strength returns, so will your confidence. Let me be absolutely clear. This is not just another exercise. This is the single most powerful movement to protect your freedom. It is the line between living life on your terms and being forced into dependence. It is the line between resilience and decline. It is the line between fear and confidence. So remember this message. If you can rise from the floor without help, you are not just strong, you are independent, you are free. And freedom is the essence of longevity. Every day you practice this movement, you are practicing life itself. Now, we've reached the end of the countdown. You've heard the 6 daily movements that the world's longest living elders never stopped doing. Each one builds a piece of the puzzle, bending, reaching, carrying, balancing, walking, and rising. But this last one, the rise from the floor, is the keystone. Lose it, and the structure collapses. Keep it, and the structure holds. So ask yourself, can you rise from the floor unassisted? If yes, preserve that ability. If not, begin now. The body remembers, it can relearn, and if you commit, you will not just add years to your life, You will add life to your years. It's never too late. Your body remembers. That is the most important truth you must carry with you as we close this journey. No matter your age, no matter how long you have been still, no matter how many times you have told yourself it's too late, your body has not forgotten. The patterns of strength, the rhythm of balance, the memory of rising, they are still there, waiting to be woken again. Muscles can be rebuilt. Coordination can be retrained. Even bones respond to the demand you place on them. Your body remembers what life feels like, and it will respond the moment you decide to move. I want to tell you about a man I knew named Samuel. At 79, he had nearly given up. His legs were weak, his back stiff, and after a fall that left him bruised and shaken, he decided he was too old to push himself anymore. He sat more, moved less, and believed the decline was inevitable. Then one day, his daughter asked him to try something simple, to sit on the floor and rise again. At first, he could barely do it with two hands braced against the couch, but she encouraged him, "Just try once a day, Dad. That's all." Reluctantly, he did. Weeks passed. Slowly, the effort grew easier. His legs grew steadier. His balance improved. By his 81st birthday, Samuel stood tall at his party and lowered himself to the floor in front of his grandchildren. Then, with no hands, he rose smoothly back to standing. The room erupted in applause. He grinned like a boy. Later, he told me, "That one moment gave me back my pride." I don't feel old anymore. Samuel did not regain his youth, but he regained something more valuable, freedom, and it came from practicing the very movements you have now learned. This is the hope I want you to carry. The elders who live the longest are not superhuman. They are ordinary people who chose not to give up. They kept moving in the small, simple ways that the rest of the world ignores. And because they did, they lived not just long lives, but full ones. You can do the same. So now I ask you to make a choice. Don't let these 6 movements slip from your memory. Practice them. Bend and squat, reach overhead, carry balance, walk with purpose, rise from the floor. Each one is a thread. Together they weave the fabric of independence. Together they protect your mind, your body, and your freedom. And don't keep this secret to yourself. Someone you know needs this. A friend, a parent, a neighbor who believes their best days are behind them. Share this message. Send it to them now, because you never know whose life you might extend, whose independence you might protect, with a truth this simple. The world chases miracle cures, expensive machines, and complicated routines. But longevity, real longevity, has always been built on the basics. Your body remembers. It's waiting for you to remind it. Start today, and then help someone else start too. Because when you share this, you are not just passing along information, you are passing along life itself.